Hey, how y'all doing? So we're gonna talk about WWE Untold AJ Styles debut from the Royal Rumble 2016. So this was an interesting documentary. I thought it was very good, actually. I thought it was a nice touch that they used a lot of TNA footage, and they actually talked about it a lot. So I went into why he left, and they actually put over Japan. They put over TNA to a degree. They didn't put over too much, but they talked about his time there. I love that WWE doesn't mind breaking the walls down sometimes when they're really doing like documentaries and they really want to tell a story. They still left a lot to talk about because his career's not over. They basically just talked about his life up until his first his appearance. So they asked him the first question is, who is the phenomenal one? And he basically says that it's Alan Jones turned up one way or the other. Either the turned up Alan Jones as far as negative, Alan Jones as far as a negative, or turned up Alan Jones in terms of a positive. And I like that response, and that's usually how it goes. Everyone knows that to be a great wrestler, you really just have to turn up your own personality. First, you have to have a personality, which is like half the battle with some of these people is trying to find their fucking personality underneath all of the flips and gimmicks and bullshit. So he talked about how he watched Georgia Championship Wrestling as a kid. He used to watch it by himself because his dad hated it, and but he always loved competition. He even played sports. He even played football. He showed some pictures of him playing football, which I thought was pretty cool because AJ Styles is another guy who was really small in wrestling terms, but actually was big enough to play football. And there was other. Shawn Michaels was another one who played football. He talked about his dad being an alcoholic and being abusive, but when his dad wasn't drinking, his dad was quite inspirational and said that because of his dad, he really believed in himself and really believed, and that his dad believed in him. I kind of paused the documentary right there and was like, that's some powerful shit he just dropped on you. His alcoholic, abusive dad really said, like, in some of his lucid moments, that shit goes to show how drugs and alcohol can change your entire behavior and change your whole entire attitude. Like it changed this guy who's still in between beatings and acting crazy, was still able to instill in his son a confidence and an attitude of, you can actually do it, you can make it. And I was like, oh, that's inspiring. Like, not the part about my dad being a drunk, his dad being a drunk rather, but the fact that out of all of that stuff, he still was able to say, that his dad taught him a very valuable lesson, something that he intends to spread to his own kids, and something that was, what you would think would be a terrible environment, and no doubt it was. He still found some type of nugget of truth in it, some type of nugget of a cornerstone on which to build a life on, and that is, you can do it. Confidence, but confidence comes with competence. That's a quote. What it means is, the more you do something, the more you succeed, the better you become at it, the more confident you become. So that's very different from self-esteem. Self-esteem is, I believe I can do it because I just believe I can do it. The self-esteem movement in the United States has kind of ruined a lot of children because it creates a sense of entitlement. It creates the, I can do it, I'm just as good as everybody else, and the only reason I can't do something is because somebody else stopped me, as opposed to the confidence movement, which is, the more you do something, the better you get at it, the more confident you feel in it, the more you're willing to take on more challenges and take on more responsibility. That's a very different movement. But then AJ Styles is 40 something. So he didn't grow up in like public education in 1990. So his view on the world is going to be so much different from a guy who's in the business now. Some of these people were born in 1992, like Peyton Royce, or 1990, like Lacey Evans. Like, these people are, children of the self-esteem movement, that you stare in the mirror and get your validation, or people just the everybody wins, everybody gets a trophy type of generation. And I really thought about that just from him talking about how his dad was an alcoholic. Like, he could have talked about how his alcoholic dad ruined his life and how his alcoholic dad abused him and his mom and all that type of stuff. But instead, he basically says, when his dad wasn't drinking, like, his dad was a drunk, but when he wasn't drinking, he was able to teach these valuable lessons. And I was like, oh God, people could use some of that stuff today. Not any of the, we don't need any more drunks beating their kids, but this was that was really good shit. So he said he met his wife in high school, and she taught him gymnastics, and she basically taught him how to fall, I think it was, or how to do some type of flip or something like that, because she was a cheerleader apparently. And then he said he went to college, but then he dropped out because he never liked school in the first place. And he basically went and got a 9 to 5, and then he met his friends from high school who were, they were, he said they were pretty big. They had been working out, and they were going to try and to become wrestlers. And he says, well, he didn't believe it, but he told them that if you found a place, I'll go with you. And he says that the place that they ended up finding was right near his house. It was so close that he had no excuse not to go. And then he says he knew from the first bump that wrestling was for him, and that this was something he was meant to do. And I was like, wow, that was interesting too, because it seemed almost like magic. But AJ Styles is a magical thinker anyway. So he talked about his name, basically AJ. His name was Alan Jones, so that's obvious. And Styles, he says he got it from it was because a promoter gave him the name Styles. He actually goofily said that he wanted to spell it differently, like with an I or with a Z on the end. Like, that would have looked so corny. Well, it would have fit the 90s. It would have fit the 90s, because that's pretty much where you would have had people with Styles with a Z on the end or something like that. But he said he got it when he had a tag team partner named Steel, and it was supposed to be Styles and Steel or something like that. And he said he hated it. He hated the spelling of it, but he just kind of got used to it over time. So he talked about going to WCW, that he was in NWA Wildside, which was WCW's developmental program, and that he was often used as an extra on Nitro. He was they showed some clips of him on Nitro getting beat up by Jeff Jarrett. It's always fun when they have these little clips of guys, being extras, because everybody's an extra at some point. Like, I really enjoy when people find those old clips. Like, some people found a clip of MJF as an extra on Raw. I think he was leading Goldberg to the ring or something like that. It was something to that effect. He was just like walking down a hallway. And it's all very interesting. Like, when Brody Lee died, they showed that he was an extra at WrestleMania. It was him and several other guys. I believe it might have been it was Adam Rose and I believe the Revival and some other guys. They were druids and during an Undertaker entrance. Then, of course, that Sasha Banks and Charlotte and all of them were women during Triple H's entrance for WrestleMania. So that's always very interesting. And the Hardy Boys were, they they opened the doors for guys at the King of the Ring in 1996. It was 1997 or maybe 1995. It wasn't, well, not 195. It's probably 96. So it was very interesting to see wrestlers as extras. Because it's like it's their first gig. It's their foot in the door. If you do that well, maybe you can get called up to do something else. So he says that he was 23 years old when he started WCW Thunder. He was actually on Thunder, and he was part of this tag team called Air Raid. I didn't see any of this because I wasn't watching WCW at the time. I probably should go back and try to find him on WCW. That might be an interesting thing for me to go and look at, and just to see it. So he says that he kept hearing about WCW going out of business, but he never believed it was actually going to happen, because it all seemed so big and it all felt like it was never going to end. But then they showed a clip of him. He said he was told that it was going out of business and WWE wasn't going to pick up his contract. But he was going to be asked to come for a tryout. So they had clips of his dark matches. They also had a clip of him doing promos and the smell of sweet success. AJ Styles is such a bumpkin, yo. He's a bumpkin, and he basically talked about how he was more concerned with spots and getting his shit in, and he says that he probably would hate the stuff that he was doing back then, but it was getting all the oohs and ahs, and that's kind of was motivating him to keep doing it. And that he says that Triple H told him after one of his tryouts way back in the day that he did good stuff, but he should probably slow down. And then he basically said that he ignored it, and that he was just going to do whatever he wanted. And then he also said JR gave him a compliment on his match with Hurricane Helms, which was on Jacked. Now, Jacked is one of those syndicated TV shows that WWE used to have, like Shotgun Saturday Night and Velocity, and they haven't uploaded on the network yet. Jacked is one of those really bad Attitude Era D shows. It was really bad. But I actually tried to watch this match after I saw the clip. I wanted to watch Hurricane Helms and AJ Styles, but they haven't uploaded it because they don't have Jacked on the network yet. So he said that Jim Ross complimented him on this match, and then he was offered a developmental deal to go to, I believe, Heartland Wrestling. But he said he couldn't move his family to Cincinnati, and his family is the most important thing to him. So he said his wife, who wanted to become a teacher, her dream came first. And so he had to turn down the developmental deal. And said, but he ended up saying it was the best decision he ever made, because that's how it opened up the doors for him to go to TNA. So Samoa Joe and Matt Kemp was in this documentary as well. Matt Kemp is, I guess, is WWE's go-to historian now, where whenever he want to talk about something WWE doesn't normally talk about, they just get Matt Kemp to do it. I guess it won't be long before somebody's going to be dirtying his name as a wrestling journalist or whatever the fuck. I don't know. But Samoa Joe says he met AJ Styles at King of the Indies. I don't know what that is, because I don't follow the Indies. But they became sort of friends a little bit later. But he says that he went to TNA, which was owned by the Jarretts, Jerry and Jeff. And he said he didn't take it seriously for 3 months. He treated it like another indie. And then he said he all the time he kept hearing that it was going out of business and that TNA was going to die. And he says that he just kept showing up. And then 11 years later, he was still there. And, he says that after 11 years, he figured out who he was. It took him a long time to figure out who he is and who he wanted to be. And, it put a chip on his shoulder, because now they didn't go into this, and it might have been pretty sweet for them to do so. But AJ Styles used to get fucked over every time a new guy came in. Like AJ was the top guy, but they were always looking for a reason to bump him. So in some ways, people will say like, oh, he was like the Shawn Michaels of TNA, but he was actually more like the Bret Hart, because Bret was that guy who was the top guy, but Vince was always looking to replace Bret. Like Lex Luger was first chance he got. He's like, okay, Lex is over. We're going to bump Bret. It didn't exactly work. And then it was like, okay, Diesel is over. We're going to bump Bret. Didn't exactly work. And then it was like, okay, we're going to get Shawn. He's going to bump Bret. It worked a little bit. And then it was like, Austin's definitely going to bump Bret. And so it was all about moving Bret out of the way. Bret is a top guy. Yeah, we like him, but he's a stalwart. But we're looking for the next big thing. And TNA was always looking for the next big thing. So when Kurt Angle came in, AJ Styles got pushed back to the X division. Then when Christian came in, it kind of was sort of the same thing, where Christian was given his long run. and AJ Styles was there for a little while, but also kind of pushed back into the X Division or back into tags or something like that. And then when the most horrible stuff started happening, uh, he was made into Baby Ric Flair, and Christian's idiot friend. Like they were really dogging him out in TNA because he didn't know what he was supposed to do. He was just being a wrestler. He was just showing up and doing whatever they told him to do. He didn't know what he was supposed to do. He didn't know what they what he was supposed to be. And it wasn't until he got to the dark Sting like AJ Styles when he started wearing the hoodie that he kind of figured out who he was. And by this point he had been in the company 11 years. And he says TNA wanted him to take a pay cut. And he thought it was kind of disrespectful because he had been there for so long and he was one of the guys, and he was to I think this is a Matt Morgan thing. He was sort of the DNA of TNA, the TNA original, the Sting of TNA, and they wanted him to take a pay cut. And he said he bet on himself, so he left. He didn't know what he was going to do, but he took off. And then he says that he went to Japan, and the Japanese were really good at making him a star, making him look like a star and feel like a star, and all he had to do was perform. And then he says that the difficult thing about being in Japan was going to Japan. It's a 14-hour flight, and he said it was worth it for the experience and the money, but it was just a lot of traveling and a lot of time away from home. So he says that winning the IWGP title was very important to him because not a lot of Americans have done it. The only American that have done it before him was, I think, Scott Norton, Bob Sapp, and Brock Lesnar. I don't think Kurt Angle's IWGP title run even counted. There might have been another American who won the IWGP, but I know Scott Norton did. I know Brock and Bob Sapp did. It might have been another American, but I can't think of it. But he basically talked about Japan gave him a lot of respect, and that was it elevated his name, and everybody knew who he was. And he says Samoa Joe is the one who leaked to him that Shinsuke Nakamura was leaving, and that once he found out that Shinsuke was leaving, there was kind of some feelers out there about him leaving too. And then he says he got in contact with Terry Taylor, and he ended up in contact with Triple H, and that, he said the money was very important. And he said, 30 minutes, him and Triple H had made a deal, and he was coming in. So that was pretty sweet. Triple H brokered the deal. And AJ Styles wants to wrestle Triple H too. Maybe they ought to make that match happen. For Triple H, I don't know if has he formally retired yet? I think that if Triple H wants to have a formal retirement, it should be with AJ Styles. Why not? So AJ says that the culture of the WWE had changed when he got signed because the smaller guys were now in. He basically, everybody gives Daniel Bryan credit for sort of breaking that culture, even though Rey Mysterio had done it, and Benoit had done it, and Guerrero had done it, and to some degree Punk had also done it. But I think that, maybe they say, just like Shawn and Brett sort of broke it in the 90s, it kind of came back with a vengeance with Brock and Cena and all those guys. Even though Eddie Guerrero and Benoit was like champion during that time, and Kurt Angle, who was another guy who wasn't all that big. But he says that it was, important because it gave him a lot of opportunities. And then he talked about the rumors, that there was a lot of rumors that he was going to WWE, and they trying their best to keep it secret, but it was pretty much out there. But he said he didn't know he was going to be in the actual Royal Rumble match until a week before. He told a week before. And he said Samoa Joe drove him to the building, and he joked about going number 2. And then that's when Triple H told him he was going number 3. And then, of course, he says, and it's always strange to hear guys say this, but he was worried that nobody would know who he was because he had been in Japan for so long, and he figured, the Royal Rumble, I don't know about, I get why he was worried because maybe he didn't know this, but the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, and SummerSlam, those are like mark events, okay? The marks gonna buy all the tickets before anybody else get a chance. And what I mean by the marks, I mean the quote unquote smarks, the internet wrestling geeks, right? Those guys are gonna make sure they get their shit in before the average Jane and Joe who live not far from the building. Those people might try to walk up and buy tickets. You know, they might just be like, "Oh, Timmy, did you know that Survivor Series is this weekend?" Like, "Mom, I want to go." And, you know, they try to get tickets on Wednesday. Or they might try to get tickets earlier in the day and go to the show. Meanwhile, the smarks and the scalpers and all them, they buying tickets day of, you know? So if you, you don't have to worry about people not knowing who you are in the Royal Rumble. They know you, okay? You don't have to worry about that ever. So basically he says that, you know, it was really emotional because everyone knew him. And he really it really touched him that everybody knew who he was and had remembered him, and you know, he had left something worth talking about. So 28 minutes later, he was eliminated by Kevin Owens. And he said he was thankful it was over because then he got to soak it up. He got to, you know, relax and, you know, absorb the feeling of finally being in WWE ring. And then he says that the next year at Royal Rumble, he was a WWE champion, walking into the match with John Cena, which he says in a different documentary, and not a different documentary, but a different article, that he feels like it's his best match that he's ever had. And I was like, ooh, oh wow, I might need to watch that match again because I remember the Styles Cena matches being really good. I don't know if I would call it the best match he's ever had, but I think it's pretty close. You know, Cena in his later years got really good. Like right before Cena left, like the last 3 years or so, he was awesome. He was really knocking it out of the park. And he was really giving. You know, he was giving a lot more than he normally would, especially when it comes to pinfalls and stuff. You know, he was giving up a lot because they were trying to make new stars. So, Samoa Joe, in closing, says that he respects AJ Styles for prioritizing his family, and that, you know, AJ Styles was a family man first, and you know, he you know, made sure that he could take care of his family everywhere that he went. So he always prioritized his money and his financial issues, and he did whatever it took to take care of his family. And now they live pretty well. And so then AJ Styles cuts this promo at the end, what I think is fantastic. He's talking about he lived his life by taking opportunities, taking advantage of opportunities, and that he says that he earned everything that he's ever got. Nobody ever gave him anything. He doesn't want anything that people are going to try to give him. He wants to earn everything. And that, you know, all things are obtainable. Don't let people tell you that you can't do anything. You can do it. You can go out and earn it. You can make it happen. You just got to be able to put the work in. And that was inspiring. That was inspiring. AJ Styles needs to be a babyface. He needs to be a babyface. Like, I know that, I think that was kind of his calling card in WWE, is he really kind of, even though I think his first world title win was a heel. Yeah, it was a heel. No, was it a babyface or was it a heel? Maybe you guys know in the comment section below. I know it was from Dean Ambrose, but I don't remember if he was a babyface or a heel, because Dean Ambrose wasn't very well liked. So, you know, especially not as a champion. Well, he was very well liked. He just wasn't liked as a champion. He didn't have enough. I think they had elevated Dean Ambrose beyond the point of his usefulness. I think people liked Dean Ambrose, and then they didn't really see him as a top guy. And so who knows? But I don't know if he was a heel or a babyface. I believe he was a babyface. That's just something that's telling me. I know he was, you know, whatever. In any event, I know that's kind of been his calling card in WWE, that he's been known as a very stalwart heel. And, you know, he got this big Undertaker match under his belt now. You know, the big match with Shane McMahon, which is actually his best WrestleMania match until the Boneyard match. And, you know, kind of says a lot about Chris Jericho and Shinsuke Nakamura that AJ Styles' best match at WrestleMania was a cinematic match and his second best match was against Shane fucking McMahon. But AJ Styles is great. Like I say, he's a graps god. He can do a little bit of everything. He really did a great job of working on his personality and learning how to, tell decent stories in the ring. If you look at AJ Styles, has a career that is very enjoyable to watch. You could watch his spot heavy, action packed stuff where he's not really putting that much thought into everything. He's just going out there trying to do cool moves, and he can be one of your favorite wrestlers because of that. You could also look at him and see, what he's doing. Really thick storytelling stuff, thick action and dramatics in the WWE, or the sort of mixture of both in Japan. Great guy, huge fan of AJ Styles. But let me know what you guys thought of this documentary if you watched it. So spread 3 commentaries. And thank you guys, and I'll talk to you guys later.